Okay, for anybody who's watching, welcome to NAMA, February 2026. We're going to post this in our Facebook group in just a second. I just got to send the link to Natalie. There you go. Got it in the chat.
Thank you.
And if you'll give us a second, we'll get all set up. Let us know when you join in if you can see or hear us.
All right.
Oh, that's exciting. You could mute it.
I know, but I didn't have time.
Well, you do now, just in case you
I'm just
accidentally.
going to turn all my sound off.
Yes, that's what I meant. Perfect. Okay, so welcome to NAMA, like I already said. Welcome Marla and Laura, who sent a message and retracted it so fast I didn't get a chance to look at it. Welcome Lori. Hi, welcome to Northern California.
From?
We're
not there.
I know, but
oh, I see. Sorry, I just woke up.
I was gonna say welcome for Northern California as well, and I was like, we're not in Northern California.
No, I was trying to say it from her vantage point. But
welcome, Judy.
That doesn't make any sense.
Okay, so I think we have only a couple questions tonight, right?
I don't know because I took a nap.
Okay, so there we go. Let's start with news. We actually have some news. I've got a brand new Intro to Nosework class. It's got a few spots left, and there'll be a wait list for people who want it. I'm excited. I love teaching intro, so if you're interested in that, definitely take a look. Also, I've got a new protege, a young corgi named Keebler. That'll be my next project. Not my dog. He's a dog I'm working, and I'm going to train him up through NW1, hopefully. At least trialing at NW1. He's a cool, fun dog, and I'm documenting all of his training. How to train a corgi for nose work. That course is on our website now. I'm going to post a link to it in the chat if I can find it quickly.
You want me to...
Does that
that's
not
weird.
work? Did
none There's of these a glitch work? On...
Oh, no, never mind. You have to click here.
Maybe we should
fix that. Yeah.
No, you're in the wrong section.
It should be all courses should be here.
Okay, go up to the top because it wouldn't be in that part. No, that's not the right part. Let me find it.
Okay.
I'll post it.
Okay, so we're going to find it and post it. But for any of you who want to see how I start a dog from scratch, this is a dog who came to me with a really nice foundation, but not necessarily a nosework foundation, with some confidence issues. So if you've got a dog with confidence issues, you want to see how I work through that. I'm documenting a lot of that stuff about how I'm feeding him in these scenarios that he's less confident in and working through all of that. I'm going to show.
Love working with.
Yes.
Low confidence dogs.
I'm going to share a lot of his obedience training as well because I'm going to do some of that. That's part of my core relationship building with the dog. And I used to think it was separate from nosework, but now I'm realizing it's not that separate from nosework. I see people are liking our video already. Thank you guys. We made it past 20 last time. And I was very impressed with you all.
Yeah, right after we ended the live stream, it went to 20.
Yes. We got to figure out a way to get that intro.
I meant to write that.
Good.
I'm just switching to a different account.
Yes, that's what you did last time, isn't it? Okay, let's see. What else do we have news for? Lots of workshops coming up. I'm about to embark on a lot of travel. I'm going to Philly, then I'm going to California, then I'm going to Pittsburgh, and then I'll be home for a moment. And then we get into hunt test season, and I'll be out in Ohio and Pittsburgh area a bunch. So I'm looking forward to all of that. We judged a trial weekend before last. I've got a couple of notes and insights for people on that, which I don't know if Natalie has some.
That.
Oh, cool. Well, my general notes from judging that was that I noticed in one of the searches, lots of people had trouble going down a narrow hallway. It was actually two banks of lockers that they had to go down. There was a hide down at the end. And I noticed that people were worried about pushing the dogs, and they did push the dogs, and the dogs were distracted by that. and that's probably something we should be practicing. And so I've actually been doing that more in my classes and things like that. That's one thing. At the elite level, the dog should be pretty much, inoculated against those types of stresses. In my opinion, you should be pushing on them all the time, pulling on them all the time, so the dog that doesn't upset the dog at all.
But then also there's a question of why didn't the dog independently want to go down to the end of the bank?
Some of them would have. They would have.
So they were not allowed to by the handler. And
sometimes they were on leash and they didn't want to let them off leash for one reason or another.
No, I mean, but on leash. So you're saying the handler following the dog was pushing the dog?
Yes.
Yeah, that certainly. Because sometimes.
Yeah, I'm not talking about like they weren't stepping on the dog. No, just following at a normal but not being able to follow offset, maybe being directly behind them.
Which is why in our more ideal handling, we want people offset because it is way less pressure for the dog. But yeah, they definitely need to be able to handle it and be able to continue working when you do have to be closer and tighter and everything.
Yes, absolutely.
And this last weekend, I was COing in Texas. And I just flew back this morning. And my brain is probably only partially turned on right now. So we'll see how this goes.
Cool. Any insights from either of those trials? Did you get both the links in the chat?
Uh-huh. Well, I don't know what you mean by both.
The How to Train a Corgi.
Where is that?
Okay, I will find it.
Okay.
You talk about news. That's why you thought I wasn't going to find it there. That's funny.
I just found the thing that I was thinking of, which was the intro series.
That's not what I was looking for.
Okay. In that case, I have no idea where you put that one.
It should be there.
It should be there.
Yeah.
But hold on. Maybe it's on the page I was on. Hang on. Whoops. I don't even know. That's not even the page I was just on.
Don't worry about that.
So one thing that I noticed, which I also noticed last year when we judged at the same location, was while some people are definitely getting better at this, a lot of people are still struggling with any transition zones, any narrowed areas. And what you're talking about is also somewhat in that category because it's a very narrowed area. It's just a lot longer. And the first search that I judged on the Elite Day had a lot of doorways, and it's often very difficult for people to manage their own energy and their movement in the space, let alone just thinking of the transition zones, the doorways as part of the search area. Often people aren't. Often people get into a room and they don't want to let the dog leave the room. The dog is trying to leave the room because they're working a hide that's shooting right through that doorway. There was one spot where there were two doorways within a foot of each other. So there was even more of that. And it's really, really important to keep that in the front of your mind when you're doing an elite search, that transition zones are important, that even if there's no hide there, there's going to be odor content there most likely, and treating that as search area just like anything else. And yet there were still some really great finds around those doorways. I think just some of them took longer than they might have otherwise. What else?
I don't see your comment here.
Okay, I'll check on it.
Okay. I'll also be posting these links in our group, but continue with what
it's
you're
showing as there on mine. I don't know.
Oh, interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You can try again. I mean, like for the NW1, I think my biggest thing, so I judged containers and vehicles. And in containers, the hardest thing for people usually was that the dog found the box pretty quickly. It was not a threshold box. It was maybe, 5 boxes in. The dogs found it really well, really quickly. They would even catch it from across the circle at times. And the handlers were just like, I can't call it this fast. And I get it, NW1 is really stressful. And a lot of times people don't have a lot of experience with that. But it's a lot harder on your dog if they give you a beautiful alert and you go, I can't respond to you right now. Or you even say something to them. It's like, let's just go around again, because, and the dog knows that you're panicking. So that's really challenging. And then in vehicles, the hide was blowing to the start line. It was on the furthest car from the start line blowing through. And because handlers saw odor interest on the first 2 cars they had to pass, it was really hard for some people to get past those cars because they didn't want to leave the odor interest they were seeing, even though the dog knew they wanted to get to the further car. And that kind of stuff, that reading is hardest at NW1, but you see that at the higher levels too. Remembering that the dog is often going to catch odor a significant distance from where it is. So don't allow yourself to contract the search area just because you saw odor interest. Return eventually if you have to, if they don't figure it out, but let them do the expansion needed to figure it out while they're actively trying to solve that problem.
Absolutely.
Looks, they said my comment showed up, so
perfect.
All right, what else?
I don't know. I think we can get to questions unless you have something else. Oh, when are March schedules going out?
Hopefully either tomorrow or the next day.
Perfect. Okay, so premium members, remember you get early access to that, so be quick so that you get your desired spots and your desired classes.
Yep.
Okay, what's our first question?
Okay, our first question is about toy distractions, which is always exciting.
Yes.
So in AKC, as probably most of you know, the toys are often just out on the floor. So for a dog who's super distracted by toys, that can be extra fun. So this person says, exercises to train a young golden or any retriever to avoid the distractor's mouth candy in buried AKC. Currently picks up distractor, carries, drops at source, alerts, gets paid, then picks up distractor and continues. So I think that's fantastic in some ways. I mean, just the fact that the dog will drop the distractor to go to source and get paid is great. They're not so distracted that they can't
only happen in buried, or does the dog do this in other elements?
Well, maybe they're only trialing in buried. I don't know.
Okay, that's true.
Because it could happen. I mean, I've seen it myself with a variety of dogs happen in any kind of AKC.
Yeah.
Because those toys can be on the ground once you're at advanced or higher.
I know she had a follow-up question about the judging about that, and I don't know anything about AKC judging, so I'd like you to answer that before I answer.
Okay. So I know some judges care more about it than others, but as to my reading of the rules, unless the dog is just playing with the toy and not working or destroying the toy, I see no reason to fault it. And I have talked to other judges who feel the same. If they pick it up, but they're still working and they're not destroying it, go ahead.
For those of you out there watching who are AKC judges or have entered AKC, have you ever been faulted, or would you fault for that? I'd be curious if you have answers to that. If you've been faulted for your dog just picking up and carrying a toy distraction versus playing with it or destroying it, those are different things.
Yeah.
But
if the dog can't get back to work, that's a big thing. But I have known multiple people whose dogs, actually retrievers also, whose dogs did that and they did not get faulted.
Okay, so I will say a couple things. Well, the other thing about dropping the toy is it a contamination thing?
Well, if they're dropping it on the odor and buried,
well, because what I was going to say, one way to avoid the problem altogether would be to give the dog a toy at the beginning of the search. But then if he drops that toy, is that contamination?
That is contamination.
Okay. Only buried. Okay.
Well, that's weird that they're only doing that in buried. Not a problem necessarily, just unusual. Yeah, so any toy but the toy the judge put being on the ground, I think, should be faultable. It's contamination, at least in the way of thinking about that.
You could teach the dog to alert while holding onto a toy. That was way too complicated. You could do that theoretically, but that would be the wrong approach.
And it's hard with retrievers because they really, really, really want to hold stuff in their mouth.
It's hard with Goldens in particular. I had a couple Goldens that I trained, and I've talked to hunt test people who train lots of Goldens, and one of the things they say is you force a lab to fetch, but you don't have to force a Golden to fetch. You have to force a Golden to out. And that was my experience with the Goldens that I had. They had some of the firmest grips of any dogs I've ever had. The first time they got a live bird, you couldn't get it from them. There was absolutely no getting it from them. And one time we were at a training event and they had a duck and the dog did something wrong and they were trying to get the duck from them. They were like, "What was your word?" And I'm like, "My word is out." And they were yelling out at this dog. There was no possible way that they could get this bird from this Golden's mouth. So Goldens have a very strong desire to carry and hold things. So I think whereas my gut instinct and what we do with most of our dogs is just allow them to carry it and they will get over it and they'll start ignoring the toys. I don't think that will necessarily work for a golden. I think the golden will be happy to carry a toy around, drop it, alert, carry it, drop it, alert. And I think we should actually interrupt that as early as possible.
So would you take the dog out and take the toy away and restart them? Or would you take it away from them within the search? While you are deciding your answer, I also want to say that one thing I have seen now, this was not a golden, this was a flat coat, but a lot of times when the handler decides, well, I need to keep the toy away from the dog, they add a huge amount of tension and they start fighting with the dog. And now the dog is fixated on the toy instead of working. So I was judging a team where the handler kept seeing the toy, the dog would see the toy, the dog would go for it, the handler would fight them, and they were missing things or taking forever. And so finally, between searches, it was a master interior. So they were eventually getting there. It was just a whole mess. I said, what if you just didn't fight with her? Or this may have been between trial 1 and trial 2. And so they were like, I'll try it because that was awful. And once they let the dog do it, the dog completed the search with no problem at all. Now, she may have carried it some, and again, I don't care if the dog carried it. So it didn't matter to me. And again, like, faults are not disqualifying unless the judge decides that this is just egregious and you're ruining the search and you have to get kicked out. But for the most part,
that is something to decide in situations like this. Is it worth just taking the fault and moving on? Which probably, especially for me in AKC, like, how much the placements really matter to you versus collecting the cues so you can move up the levels.
Yeah, everyone has to decide how they feel about that. Also, do you think with a golden in particular that if they used a toy as the reinforcer, that they might be able to get more value on odor?
The fact that, I have some more questions for you that you can answer while we're discussing. But since you said only buried, I have a question. Why don't you think the dog does this in other searches? What's going on differently there? And what maybe could you import to buried that what if you're in an exterior search and there's a toy on the ground? The dog won't pick it up. Okay, what if we add one empty container of buried out, but it's an exterior search? Will the dog pick up the toy now? Okay, if the answer is no, what if we add 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or 6? And now what if one of them has odor? Is it maybe something else that's going on?
Well, a lot of dogs do not appreciate buried, partially because they're confused within the search. And partially because they can never get to source, which is like containers also. So there's often stress in buried that is not present in other searches. Also, if there's been failure, the handler may be coming in with more stress, which may be causing the dog to want to find something to self-soothe on or whatever. So yeah, that is very interesting that it's only in buried.
For sure. So I think that if you want to be able to solve this, you've got to first solve it outside of nose work. We need a way to teach the dog that they're not allowed to pick up a toy in certain situations.
Or to have a fabulous out.
You need a really good out. Well, in order to teach the dog this, in my opinion, you need a good out. And this means it needs to, in my opinion, not be an out that's an exchange for food, because now you're rewarding the dog for picking up a toy in order to out it in exchange for food. So that won't work. I need it to be an out that the dog understands. Out means put it down and don't pick it up again, right?
Closer to a leave it than most people's out, probably.
Yes, sure. So I would teach an out. Lack of experience with buried, yes. So if that's what I'm wondering, because if it's a lack of experience with buried, you don't have to do anything I'm saying. It might still be worth doing what I'm saying, but you don't have to do it. All you got to do is take the toys away and just build up your dog's buried skills. That's very valuable. So now, building the out separately, making it really solid, in obedience, being able to walk your dog past a toy, being able to recall your dog over a toy. If they pick it up, being able to tell them out and they spit it out, and then repeating. And then when that's really good and the dog understands I'm going to have to do a set of tasks and there will be toys tempting me and I must ignore them. I'm not allowed to pick them up. There will be consequences if I pick them up of some kind, whether it's being put away or whether it's something else. And then you can apply that to a nosework search where if the dog decides to pick it up, you can tell them out, search. And hopefully that won't become a behavior chain, because that's kind of what we want to avoid. It's already becoming a behavior chain. So we want to kind of avoid that by extinguishing it and punishing it a little bit.
Well, good luck with that. And if there more goes on through training, and you can update us if you have more questions or whatever, unless you have more to say about that.
Yeah, I do, because she's giving us things here. So, and she's saying maybe the dog had an opportunity to find toys in other searches. So that may be something worth doing. We do we do a series of exercises in a class we've been doing a lot recently. We mostly do them with food, where it's like a segmented search. So over here you have a search, and over here you have some distractions, and you want the distractions and the wind to be blowing into the search. And they're divided usually by a line of cones. The line of cones is just there for the handler. The dog is not allowed on the other side of the cones where the food distraction is. They're only allowed on the side where the odor is. And so if I put a bunch of toys there and I teach the dog to ignore the toys and only focus on the search, eventually I can start blurring those lines so that they go past a toy or near a toy. And pretty soon the dog just tunes out the presence of toys. That's a very valuable exercise.
We also sometimes do things like putting toys in a crate in the search
area.
Yeah,
so they can't pick them up.
They can't self-reinforce, but they have to get used to. Those are just there. Those are just there. I've had 2 tennis balls in a crate in our training room for like a month.
Yeah.
And no dog's paying any attention to them except for the ones who haven't been there in a while. Like, oh, why are these here? Or if they're really struggling with a hide, they're going to say, well, if I can't find it, I'll just mess around with these. So in some cases, it doesn't sound like it with this dog since he's working and finding the hides anyway, but sometimes it's frustration and they're finding something else to do. So everything depends on the details. So some exploratory searches to figure out where those boundaries are always useful.
Absolutely.
Okay. Anything else?
Oh, there's one other thing you might try, which is putting a hide on a toy. This is something I would do later on down the line. But sometimes if there's a toy in the search and then there's a hide on it and the dog goes to the toy, maybe even with the intention of picking it up, but goes to the toy, sniffs it, notice there's odor on it,
there's odor,
and you pay quickly, we can transform the dog's conception of a toy, even a very toy motivated dog, that I'm more interested in sniffing the toy to see if it has odor on it and then getting paid. And if there's no odor on it, I'll go maybe to another object or to another toy even to find odor. And sometimes dogs stop picking them up when you do this.
Yeah.
We saw that a little bit. I think people saw that at the Nationals.
The first National.
Yeah, where they did a huge toy search with tons of toys. No one had ever seen that before. And a lot of dogs came out and started picking up toys. But then as soon as they found an odor on a toy and got paid, the dogs lost interest in picking up the toys.
Like, this is interesting. Yeah. This is weird. Although a lot of them couldn't call it right away because they were flabbergasted that there was odor on a toy.
Yes. So something to consider. It's a kind of a counterintuitive way of fixing it. Also, it will draw more attention to a toy. So it could backfire on you a little bit.
Yeah. What was I thinking about? Oh, we talk about a lot with food distractions, but it's the same with toy, that eventually when you get through the training process, you want, when they catch the food, or in this case, toy, you want them to go, there must be odor around here. So not that they're necessarily always together, but that they're nearby, and the dog goes, there's got to be a hide. That's how I'm going to get what I want. And in some cases, it may not work with the Goldens because they want to possess so much. They just want to hold it. But with most dogs who are that interested in toys, I would want to see if the handler could play around with paying with the toy, because that might make the odor so much more valuable that they might be less interested in just the hanging about toys. But
which one of the courses I'm working on to release on our website is Mastering Distractions. And that covers a lot of these drills that we're talking about and goes step by step and teaching a dog how to like search actively, enthusiastically in the presence of distractions, all types of distractions. And so if you're interested in that, bug me about it, because then I'm more likely to film the exercises and post them on the website and hopefully get that done so that you guys can buy that course. And I love that course. I've run it a couple times on virtual classes, and people always seem to like it. So cool.
Good. Okay. Next question. As a judge/trainer, what mistakes do you see handlers do most often? Does this change regarding the level? So we talked a little bit about the trials we were just at, but I think more broadly, we probably have a little bit different ideas.
Let's go by level. Let's start with NW1 level. I think the most common mistake handlers make is attempting to direct the dog too early in the search. I think there's a case for directing a dog in a search in NW1. Like,
if you want to pass.
Yeah, if it's been a minute or two and your dog isn't being productive, okay, let's move them around.
Now, on the other hand, if your dog needs that at NW1, should you be passing and going into NW2? Maybe not. Maybe you should do a little bit more, but people want to pass the trials they enter.
Yeah,
so I
but
understand.
I saw at the last NW1 that I was judging, people came in from the very beginning, directing the dog away from the hide constantly because the handlers thought they knew more and better than the dogs. And so that's probably the biggest thing at NW1, especially even if you've been taught to just follow the dog, nerves kick in and you go, I'm going to take over the search. I'm going to take over the win because trust me, I know more than you know. It's very tempting at that level to do.
Or it's never going to be on the grass. Stay on the patio.
Which is exactly what happened at the NW1 that I just judged. It was on the grass. It was not on the patio, and people directed the dog away from the grass multiple times. And then by the time they finally gave into the dog had lost too much motivation. So it didn't even matter.
And that's part of why we tend to recommend for people when they're going into an NW1, give your dog the first half of the search time to do it completely on their own, because then they're in a little bit more the mindset of see if my dog can do it on their own, but then they feel like they have an out if the dog isn't getting it done. And in most cases, the dog will have gone and found the hide.
Yeah.
Another thing at NW1, which I already talked a little bit about, is just reading the dog. A lot of times, if it's their first time, their first nose work dog, their first time trialing through the levels, they just don't have the hours or the stress management to see what's going on, and then they don't call the hide like I talked about earlier. So errors in reading are pretty big at 1 and later, but mostly worst at 1.
So moving up to the like NW2 and 3 level, I'll lump those because they're similar, I think. Actually, there's big ones at NW3 that are really obvious to me. What about NW2?
NW2, often the handler is not paying good attention to where the dog is covering.
Yeah.
And so if they're
getting
missing
lost,
a hide,
they get lost and they don't remember where they've been and where they haven't been.
And their dog may have not known a whole area was even part of the search, but they didn't realize it because they're stressed and thinking about, oh my gosh, we got to find 3 hides.
Yes.
And those are harder in like exterior and interior than in vehicles and containers usually.
Yes, I would agree. That's the most common. What about NW3?
Searching forever when the dog's been
not
done.
Leaving early enough. Yes. I think NW3, a great motto to start out with at least is get in, get out. Get in, cover your search area, get out as quickly as possible. You're going to leave some hides behind at the beginning, but it's better to tune that direction than staying in too long, getting a bunch of false alerts and having to now remediate, fix a bunch of problems in training.
And a lot of baggage that you've picked up.
Yes. Missing hides, in my opinion, is better than falsing at NW3.
And a lot of people just want to say, I'm going to rely on that 30-second call. I'm going to just stay until that's called.
You can do that at Elite. Don't do that at
Well, at Elite, you may even want to push it to 2 seconds
for
the end of the time, depending on the space. And it's still in that, I think you need to read the dog about whether you should still be going or whether you should have left already. But it's worst in NW3.
Yes. What about Elite?
Elite, keeping track of where your dog has and hasn't been. And when I word that specifically that way, because I'm not saying that you have to micromanage where they're going.
Correct.
I'm saying you have to pay attention to where they haven't been, so that if they never get themselves there, you can decide whether or not you want to do something about that. Because you don't know, what can you do? You're going to miss a hide that was so easy if you ever got into that part of the search area.
Yeah,
time management wrapped up in that.
Time management, yeah, and I would probably say memory.
Yes.
Which is similar to what you're saying. But if you haven't worked on memory, because it's not as hard to remember 3 hides, and that's all you have to remember up to NW3.
And often your space is simpler. It's not a bunch of adjoining rooms or something, or not incredibly cluttered.
Yes. I would agree. I think the big thing that I noticed at the Elite trial we just judged was awful time management. And that was time management and memory kind of go hand in hand. They didn't remember they had 3 other areas to search and they wasted a bunch of time in this area, and it's all wrapped up.
In trying to answer this question, we may sound super critical of the people we just watched. And
because they did very nicely.
Yeah, we're not meaning to be mean about it at all. And we also know just how difficult trialing is and how much that stress impacts everybody. But that is something you very often see at Elite trials, that people get super lost, that they haven't gotten used to kind of apportioning the time to different areas. I had one and I lost it. So what do you have?
Okay. Dave has a comment here for NW1 level. Does entering a trial too soon count as a handler mistake? I see a lot of this.
Sure.
It can, absolutely. I have particular feelings about that. I think it's true. You can enter a trial too early. I would say that happens for me, at least my students more that do AKC. Entering novice trials, because in order to enter an NW1, you have to first pass an ORT.
3 of them now.
Yes. Yeah. So that is a stumbling block to entering too early a little bit. And you could still enter too early. I agree. But I see so many people putting their dogs on odor and running into novice AKC trials with no experience on the dogs. It's awful. It's really bad.
Well, and you can sign up for 4 searches. Sometimes you could sign up for
8
searches.
Yeah.
You could sign up for 2 days of 8
The
searches.
sky is the limit.
And that's real not good if you're not ready. And even if you are ready, why start with everything?
Yes. Yeah, and not pacing yourself in AKC. And there are different, I would say there are different handler mistakes for AKC as an NACSW.
Yes, because the levels are different and the pressures of the levels are different.
Yes. But I feel like if you've passed your RTs, okay, I'm being very generous to people here, but if you passed your RTs and your dog has some good skills, going into an NW1 with the hope of giving your dog access to a new environment and giving them experience isn't necessarily an awful thing.
It's all about attitude, though.
It is about attitude. And yes, it's not a bad thing to delay. But yeah, like at the NW1 we just judged, I don't know if I felt like any of them shouldn't have been there. Maybe 1 or 2 dogs.
Yeah, 1 or 2.
Yeah, not a huge amount.
And it wasn't because they couldn't have done it. It was because they hadn't worked with someone who could have helped them with things they didn't know. So a lot also depends on just what kind of preparation you're getting.
Yeah.
But
that's a very good point. I don't disagree with it.
Not enough exposure to null environments.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's something that we are telling people from like week 1.
Yeah.
Even if all you're doing is open, like 4 open containers, 2 steps from your house.
Yeah.
Do something newish.
Outside of your living room. Just go somewhere, please.
Yes. So, and if people are doing that from the beginning, hopefully by the time they've passed ORTs and are able to get into a 1, there's the dog has done, at least 20 different locations. But if that's not happening, and that's all up to the handler, we as trainers can't do anything really about whether or not people take the time to pack up their dog and go somewhere.
Yep.
The thing I was thinking about was managing competition stress, which is
at every level or
at every level.
Okay.
But I would say it's bad at NW1 because people don't have.
They're just new.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then it gets better probably in 2. A little worse again in 3 because you don't know how many there are.
And I would say it's different for each 3 title. So the first one is usually worst, and the last one is the worst. But the second one is usually not so stressful.
Yeah. And then in elite, it can be better or worse depending on what you know about the search, what the CO tells you, how you interpret walkthrough videos. So it's a different kind of competition stress, but it's less stressful than NW3 in a lot of ways because you can make a whole lot of errors and still end up keeping your 43 points. And it depends on what your goals are. If your goal is 100 points and you got 90, or you think you're on your way to 90, you might be having a lot more stress than whatever. So yeah, managing at whatever level you are, managing your own competition stress is really important. Do you want to go through the AKC ones?
Unless you have something to say. I don't have as much experience with AKC. So.
I would say one of the biggest differences is just detective because you have to be perfect. And so it puts a really different pressure on the handler, which creates different errors. And it usually creates more overworking errors than underworking errors because if you miss anything, it's just as bad as if you call the false alert.
Yeah.
So also knowing the pressures of what you're going into helps you figure out the errors you're going to tend towards, which helps you fix those errors or at least manage your errors. Okay. And if anyone has any other questions about those, let us know. So here's a question. Does a young dog's first heat cycle or impending one play any role when you put a dog on odor? in when you put a dog on odor. I've been trying to wait for my new little turf girl to put my new little turf girl onto odor until her first heat cycle, but some of her full sisters have waited until well over a year to have a heat cycle. So my first Malinois was 18 months when she had her first heat cycle. According to your checklist, she's more than ready at 8 months, and I don't want to rush her, but I also feel like she's telling me she's ready. She currently goes to everywhere. I had a hide set for them in a room that she goes in after I run the searches. Yesterday, I walked her near an Annis crack hide on her way to search, and she sourced it. In my mind, I had said I would start her when I felt she was ready after her first heat cycle because I know that it can be such a challenge for our little girls. Sorry, I'm trying to read ahead.
Just read each word.
And with boys, I generally want them to get through at least that first testosterone surge and make sure they're not total weirdos. My male turf was not even close to being ready for a year. I have 2 dogs at NW1, so it's not that I'm in a rush.
So, in my opinion, and I know there are plenty of people who will disagree with me here, but in my opinion, if the dog has a stable temperament, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter at all. I don't care. I don't think about it. We've put dogs on odor well before their first heat cycle. So, in fact, let's talk about the dogs we put on odor before heat and after heat.
Sure.
So, after heat was
Cinnamon and
Lumi. Probably Maggie. No, not Maggie, because she was 6 months when she did her ORT.
Was anyone else
after?
I don't think anyone else was after.
So those are the only 2 that we waited for a heat cycle.
I don't remember actually when the Border Collies had their first heat.
Catfish was male. He was after his testosterone surge that he went on odor, I think.
You waited quite a while to put him on odor because he was a total weirdo, even before and after.
Yes, and it didn't help to wait, I don't think. So that's a whole separate story we can get into.
It is. Some of the trainers you talked to were like, why have you still not put him on odor?
Yeah, they were.
And he continues to be a bit of a weirdo even after being neutered. So,
but he's matured now, and he's better now at like 6 years old.
He's 7.
7, yeah.
Yes. He's way better now.
I can't believe how old he is. Okay, so before heat cycle, so Minnow went on odor. Minnow went on odor at
was like 3 or 4 months.
10, 11 weeks old, 12 weeks old, something like that. Icy went on odor
at 6
right before 6 months.
Just before 6 months. And again,
like
she didn't
5 3/4.
She didn't have her first heat cycle until she was 18 months. Tris put her on odor at about 6 months, 7 months.
Yeah, because she entered there was an ORT the day before her 6 month.
No. That was someone else. That was Lainey.
So that's why she couldn't do it. Yeah. Okay, yeah, you're right. That's what I was thinking.
So Tris was able to. She's about a month older.
Yeah.
And then she went into heat at 12 months ish.
Yeah.
You already said Maggie. So is that everybody?
Yeah, and so Tris and Icy and Minnow, also Hazel and Ghost. I don't feel like it influenced their acquiring of odor or their future search behavior.
So we also.
But Maggie, I'm not sure.
Yeah, maybe we should talk about her more, but. They were not seemingly extra hormonal dogs. There are some dogs who stop searching like a month before they go into heat and aren't normal searchers again until a month after they're done. And that will happen heat cycle after heat cycle. And for those dogs, I think it probably does make more of a difference. Now, all of this being said, if a dog came to my class and we'd been talking about putting them on odor and they said, oh, she just started going into season, I would say, let's wait until she's through it so we can see who she is in this process. But if I think it's months off, then I wouldn't be worried about putting the dog on odor.
Yeah. And I'm also curious to hear from you guys. Does anybody have their own personal experience about putting them on odor or not? So I'm not trying to nudge you one direction or another. If I want to nudge you in any direction, it's don't think about putting her on odor at a particular age. Pick the ORT you want to go to. And what I do is I put the dogs on odor a month before the ORT. I have a very good success rate with this. This Corgi Keebler that I'm probably going to put him on a month and a half, maybe 2 months before, just because of the timing of putting him on odor with my travel schedule. That's what is going to happen. But that's what I tend to do. That's my preference. I have a whole host of reasons for that, but that's my recommendation. That said, I think you probably, if your dog has a stable temperament and they're pretty solid and the lineages and they don't get weird when they go into heat.
And you think that it might be another 8, 9, 10 months off, I wouldn't be wanting personally to push it that far.
I'm not sure that waiting to put them on odor will change whatever hormonal effects happen.
No, I really think it's if they're in the middle of something really weird, that's when problems are more likely to happen. I think if I actually think that often dogs who are put on odor as puppies are even better than dogs. I mean, I think there are plenty of amazing dogs who are put on odor at 10 years old, but I've never personally regretted putting a dog on odor when they were, 4, 5, 6 months, whatever.
And even Maggie, who probably has the most issues of any of our nosework dogs. This part of why I want to say some of this, we put her on odor and she did her ORT around 6 months old, and she did her NW1 after Tris, just for timing reasons. I don't think waiting to put her on odor or doing it earlier or doing it not at all would have changed anything. That was just always going to be her development because of her temperament, because of her socialization, because when she came to us, she was not our dog and she spent some time with her mom and sometimes with us. And so we didn't have control of these things. So all of those things together meant that she developed a slightly unstable temperament.
And how much of that is genetic?
Yeah, exactly.
Probably at most.
Exactly. So for those reasons, I don't think it would have made a difference, and I'm not unhappy. I wouldn't change much about what I did in terms of exposing her to odor, at least.
No, I mean, I think if she had been ours from 8 weeks old, we would have done things differently with exposing her to life in the world and that sort of thing, but not in terms of her nosework development.
This is interesting. This person's saying, I put my dog on odor on the first day of her heat cycle because the lesson was already scheduled. How do you feel that worked out for your dog? Do you think it crippled her? Do you think it made any difference? Do you think it made her better? Some dogs get really hungry during heat.
Yeah.
And so sometimes it can increase their intensity.
Now, one thing that I have gotten to witness a lot more than exactly when dogs are put on odor relative to their heat cycle is that dogs go to trials when they're in season. And I have never felt like it hurt my dog's trial significantly. My dog has gotten Icy has gotten first place overall while she was in season. Hazel would get where she wanted to mark everything. So she was definitely more distracted when she was in season. But when she got to odor, she would find odor just fine. Now I know some dogs, because you always know who's in season because they have to run last, they're wearing panties and everything. I've seen other dogs who got first place in season, and I've seen dogs who could not complete any of the searches when they were in season. So much is about that dog's temperament. Hazel was always really extra needy. She wasn't weirdly hormonal, but she wanted to do a lot of cuddling when she was in season, whereas my other dogs, you can almost not tell that they're in season.
Yeah, I personally prefer running first in the running order. So for those reasons, I don't love running a dog in season, but I've run dogs in seasons multiple times in trials, and it doesn't seem to affect their performance. If anything, I do feel like they maybe did a little bit better, most of them. Someone in the comments was talking about that they put their dog on odor when she felt the dog had a good understanding of hunting in different locations, and that her dog shuts down a month before and a month after heat, which I trained a dog out of that lineage, and I can vouch for that. The dog that I trained was untrainable a month around her heat. I just put her away. I was like, I'm not even bothering because she was so moody, so unmotivated.
And then when she's out of it, she's great.
She's great, yeah.
She's following up with that dog's daughter has no problems surrounding her heat cycle.
Interesting. Okay.
So who knows? And I've known other dogs who had really interesting extended weirdness around their heat cycle, and lots of dogs with none.
We probably do have a lot of opinions on this because we almost exclusively own females. Catfish is our only male that we've ever owned, and so all of our dogs have been bitches, and most of them have been intact. So we have to think about that a lot.
Only the first 2 did we spay.
Yeah.
And we don't feel that it has held them back at all. I mean, the only thing, the saddest thing it ever did was keep Icy from competing in the NAD invitational because she couldn't jump being in season. But
they don't let in season dogs jump into the pool. I wonder why.
Can't you just swap out the water between every dog? So that's the only thing. But it is a lot harder with some dogs than others, and I also wonder if there are more concerns surrounding males in some cases. Because they do go through often such a big social change with other males. And so maybe some of that may depend on if they're in a private setting or a group setting, even not that they're searching together, but that they know other dogs are there. I do think that Catfish both had a big transition into adulthood as an intact male, and then a big transition when we got him neutered. Now also females.
Well, he had a lot of big transitions. He also had big transitions into pet doghood,
right?
Like from being a ranch yard dog, yeah.
And my first female, I will say, I think she became more aggressive towards other dogs after she was spayed. So that doesn't directly have anything to do with nose work. But I do think it impacted her like experience in the parking lot and maybe residual thoughts or feelings she had in the searches. So there may have been more impact than I was aware of in that hormonal shift. So hormones are super important. But I personally have never attempted to wait until they had gone through heat to put them on odor. Okay, next.
Yeah.
All right.
Since we spent like 20 minutes on that.
We like
it was a good question.
Yeah. My dog wants to keep going around the search area in the same direction. What is the best way to get him to turn and to continue searching, going the other direction with as little disruption to him as possible? Thanks. I would probably start outside of nose work and make sure that he's balanced.
Like, will he walk on your right and left side on a walk for an hour?
With the different, forward lead of his legs.
Sure, if he's running, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's a good point. And I would also say I would start outside of handling in terms of your training. So we have our inchworm drill. I would make sure that your dog is proficient going both on their bad side, going the bad direction. Make sure that's just as easy as going the right direction, if not easier. Like if you make that easier, you can flip the dog's preference.
Yeah, like Michael taught herding for years, and in instinct tests, it was almost always immediately obvious which side was the dog's good side and which was their weak side. And so part of the lessons for the beginning component of their sheep herding training was teaching them to go on the side that wasn't comfortable for them. And once they became strong on that side, it became much easier to turn them. And then once you're sure that it's not a physical imbalance, then there are a lot of ways to work on turning the dog that are pretty minimally intrusive if you have the body language and the leash work and where your head and feet are pointing and all of that worked out correctly. But if it's this hard for him, I would wonder if it was physical first.
Yeah. And then, okay, so now let's talk handling. So I'm in a search area and the dog's going around the search area in the same direction. I need to switch their direction. What's the best way to do it with as least little disruption to him as possible?
So you start with a little, and then you know how to escalate as needed. So I'll let you go into the details.
Well, actually, I would disagree. I would say rip the Band-Aid off. Just do it. I think the least disruption is the thing that takes the least amount of time. Now, obviously, that doesn't mean swinging him around the room, right? Obviously not. But I think sometimes if you start small, which is what we'd probably do in training a lot, is like, okay, let's see how little you can do to switch their direction. Maybe if you haven't practiced that in a trial, you might end up protracting the ordeal into a longer, bigger thing than it needs to be.
Well, I would definitely separate training and trialing.
Yes.
In what I'm saying. But I would do a lot of.
I'm talking about in trial. So we're handling a dog.
If you're in trial, do what you got to do. But if he's going to get pissed off and not work, then that's going to be a problem.
Yeah. But so what I might do is walk up to the dog like I'm ending the search, turn them around, and re-cue, like do a brand new start line. This is like triage. This is not good.
Right.
This is like, we got to make this work so that we can get out of the search and then go back to training.
Yeah. But I think you really want to work through the process if you can possibly before that.
Other thing I would say is do your change of direction as outside of the search area as possible. So if you're on vehicles, leave the vehicle, switch direction, then come back. Leave the containers, switch, and come back. If you're in exteriors or interiors, that's harder to do. But try not to do it on an object or, somewhere while the dog is actively checking something important.
Yeah, if you do this when your dog is in the middle of solving a problem, it's both going to be frustrating for them. It's not going to work well, and it may miss you a hide. So even in interiors, you can often pull into the middle, reset yourselves, make sure you're not interrupting something the dog is actively doing.
Yeah. We're getting some great comments here too. Nikki's talking about a front cross is fantastic for switching directions. Yes. If you know agility turns, these are very valuable things. That's what we teach in our classes, and we teach it in a particular drill. So yes, that's very important.
Often on containers, because it's much easier, and dogs tend to understand switching directions on containers more easily than other things. Like a room, like, well, why can't I just keep going and going?
And then Dave's saying when you ask for a change of direction might be more important than how you do it. Ask when they are likely to comply. That's what I'm saying as well. If you do it away from objects while they're working, most dogs are a little bit more willing, but also you're less likely to get in troubles like false alerts and things like that. But yeah, I think that's true. Like it's timing and attitude are probably more important than technique.
And I have no idea what level this dog is, but Hazel, for example, didn't really know how to hear me in a search until we were in Elite, and I decided I had to help her learn how to hear me because there were things we weren't able to work on together because it had always just been she just did whatever she wanted, basically. And so I did exercises where I would send her into areas and she would be successful, and then later on we would I would also send her in areas that weren't useful. But when she learned how to hear me, then all of that became quite easy. So often you just need a couple of light bulb moments, and then the dog will go, "Oh, you're actually asking me for something. Okay." But if a dog is paying any attention to you, some people, all they need to do is change where they're looking, and the dog is going to go there.
Sometimes, and then you have to actually like desensitize.
Absolutely. I was talking to someone about this last week, and I said, now that I have shown you exactly how much your dog is following your eyes, you have to be very careful with this information, and you have to teach the dog not to do everything that you're, just where you're looking constantly. But yeah, if I need to ask my dog to change direction often, I'm going to start with a slight turn and see if my dog is paying attention. And then if they're not, I'm going to say their name, and often they go, "Oh, okay, we'll go the way your shoulders are now pointing."
That's another thing that's worth really emphasizing is, like, don't be afraid about using your voice. I know a lot of people don't want to, and obviously if your dog has an association with your voice and is going to go into obedience mode, that's a challenge. But if I'm in a search, I need my dog's attention to switch direction or something. Hey, Minnow, here. Okay, search. Just a little something. Again, the less dramatic you make it, if you're trying to do something really fancy with your body and your leash and you're protracting things out for a long time, the dog doesn't understand, so it becomes a fight.
Yeah, a lot of times you're like, just tell me and I'd be happy to do it.
Exactly.
And I don't know, if this dog is really hard charging, a lot of times those dogs just aren't paying attention. And if you just get a little, their soft recall word, that they'll go, "Oh, yeah." I don't use my icy here. I say ice, and she goes, "Oh, okay, I'll go with you."
Yeah, I kiss. That's my soft recall.
And I used to do that, and then a trainer kept pestering me about it because she was interpreting my kiss differently than I was using it. So anyways, I think I untrained myself mostly from using it. But then what I do, if I need to do it with the leash, I'm going to do what we were talking about before with the front cross stuff, but I'm also going to pull my leash in. Because if the leash is super loose, but I'm doing something the dog is paying no attention, we're going to get tangled and it's going to be a mess. Yeah. So have your leash in your shoulders and your feet and your eyesight and everything ready to do the turn. And then you cross them in front of you and then you keep going. And then following them into their new direction is really important, because if you ask them for something and then you don't follow them, they're going to be confused and frustrated. And all that.
Brian's talking about in interiors using a corner to reverse directions, which I think is valuable to use the layout and topography of the search to lend itself to your advantage. So if you can find a place where you're not too far behind the dog, where you're almost able to cut them off a little bit, then you can get their attention and switch. That can be useful as well.
Yeah, for sure. Anything else about this one?
I don't think so.
Okay. What are some ways to teach the dog to search an area the handler is blocking? I love this question.
Block it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, put in a hide and then block it. And we do this all the time in class. One of the easiest ones is to put it on a chair and sit on the chair. We do that in class all the time.
One that we start with. And then we'll do it like a hide on the wall that you accidentally slide in front of. And then when the dog shows any desire to get behind you, because some dogs are very polite about this stuff, any desire to get behind you, you go, "Oh, was I in your way?" And then you start asking for a little more push and a little more push. And pretty soon they're just going to be shoving you out of the way to get to odor.
It's also useful to remember that building the dog's confidence with anything blocking a hide is also useful here. So teaching the dog to push a door out of the way, to push an object out of the way, to get wedge themselves into a tight object that's not a human
Mhm.
is probably an important prerequisite before you start blocking.
Yeah, if they can't do that, then there is some stuff they need to work through in their both their understanding and their confidence that will make it much easier.
Yes. And then and obviously adding tools to help them, like pairing, putting a box or a chair, some object that they know well at first. But
Mhm.
pretty soon you can escalate that pretty far to the point where you're literally, I was at the park with someone doing a private lesson, and the dog was, we were working on stickiness. The dog's going to the hide, and I sat next to the hide, and the dog figured out, okay, I still go to the hide. And then I put my arm over it, and the dog moved my arm out of the way to get it. And then I started pushing the dog's nose out of the way, and he had to fight me to get to the hide. And it's like pretty soon you can do some pretty crazy things, and the dog will accept
And
it.
as the dog, if you do it right, the dog understands that as a fun way where they
Yes.
get to work a little extra hard and then get paid. And a lot of dogs really appreciate getting to be pushed and tested a little bit in that kind of way.
Yes.
Okay. Recently, I volunteered at an NACSW NW1 trial. During the briefing, the CO told handlers that if they called an incorrect alert, the judge would tell them where the hide was located, and they were allowed to bring the dog to the hide and reward them at the hide location. But they weren't supposed to have the dog search for the hide. Is this a good plan? Will it develop a bad habit for the dog to have the handler show them the hide location?
Yes. This is a question I get all the time from people, and here is what I tell my students. In general, at an NW1 level, if my dog doesn't find a hide, I don't want to lead them to the hide, show them the hide, and feed them. I think that is a bad concept, with a few exceptions. So most of the time, what I tell my students to do is thank the judge. Remember the hide placement replicated in training. Don't do it there. Just leave. Now, if your dog's actively working and they're an inch from it, okay, don't pretend I didn't say this. Let the dog work and find it and just act oblivious. Say,
It'll
oh,
probably
he
take
found
a
it.
millisecond anyway.
Exactly. So don't worry about it. But anyways, here are the exceptions. Here's when I will take the dog over and pay them. One is when I've hurt the dog's or not me, but the dog's confidence is hurt in some way. They're nervous about the environment. Something has spooked them a little bit. I'm just going to use that as an opportunity to recover the dog. Take the dog somewhere, build a little stickiness, make it a fun game, and leave on a positive note. Or if I or my dog is particularly frustrated for some reason, like there's some emotional thing that's hanging us up, not just like frustrated that you didn't find the hide. No, you'll live. But the dog is like having a really bad day, and you're worried they're going to start associating a bad association with trial. Make it fun. And you don't have to make it fun in the search. You could make it fun in the parking lot and do that, but
it's probably not going to hurt anything to just take that moment and make it fun at the hide location. And sometimes I'm not sure the dog has any idea the hide is there.
No,
because they didn't get to search to it. From a training perspective, it's not something I like as just a baseline policy, but from a trial perspective, I think it helps a lot of people get out of the search in a better place.
Yes.
And their dog, therefore, being in a better place. So I think it can be worth it. However, if the person either knows that they don't like what they're building when they do that, or doesn't feel the need for it, they're managing their emotions well, I would prefer to just go to the warm-up box and let my dog find the box and pay them there. On the other hand, hopefully this is happening so little that if you just walk over to a hide and pay the dog a few times, it's such a drop in the bucket that it's not going to mess you up.
Not going to make a huge difference. Yeah.
But some, it's having both judged and CO'd twice in the last 2 weeks. I have seen it be very difficult for people to just walk over and pay their dog. And I understand, because I don't really want to do that either. But we can't spend the time to have everyone find the hide.
It just takes too much time. Yeah.
And it's the policy of the trial.
Yeah.
So if it is distressing for you to just walk over and pay your dog at the hide, don't do it. The point is for it to be less emotionally distressing and to get out of the search on a higher note. So decide what works for you and then do what works for you. But also, again, like I dropped that earlier. If you, like Michael said, need a boost for you and or your dog, just do it and go, drop in the bucket. I got to pay my dog, which is super reinforcing for humans. And my dog got to get paid and they got some nice food and we're going to get out of here. And maybe we'll still do the warm-up boxes or maybe we'll go to the car, and just don't worry about it. Don't let it get in your head.
Yeah. The other thing I was going to say about that is that if you want to do what we're recommending and leave, or what I'm recommending, leave the search area, without paying the dog, know that some judges might insist or even look down on you a little bit, like you're being a bad sport. So it can be helpful to say, like, thank you, we're okay, we're going to go back to the car and smile and be happy as you leave.
Or we're going to go to the recovery boxes.
Yeah, we're going to just do the warm-up boxes. Yeah, something like that. Some judges will look at you funny, but I think most judges get it. But you might get a little bit of pushback, like, oh, bring your dog over here, and it'll be up to you at that point whether you want to push back or not.
Yeah. I actually, as I CO'd an NW1 and 2 yesterday, and I told them what the policy was, especially the NW1 people, that the judge was going to tell you where the hide was, and you're welcome to go over and pay them. It was an opportunity to search, but I also told them if they were uncomfortable with that in any way, they didn't have to, and they could utilize the warm-up boxes or not as they wished. And so I hope that, if people feel some permission to do what they feel is best for their dog in the moment, that there doesn't have to be so much stress around this concept, because it's coming up more and more that people are feeling more uncomfortable with it as they're understanding.
You're also not allowed to do it at the higher levels. So
yeah,
but it's a lower level trial, so it doesn't really matter. And Brian's saying here that there was a wind shift in vehicle search that he did, and his dog got caught in pulling, and he took him to the hide to show him where the odor was coming from. I don't think doing that is going to ruin your dog. I think if it happens too many times in a row, it's not necessarily the best association. So if you want to do it, then you should do it.
Yeah.
But if you don't want to do it, you don't have to.
Yeah.
There are reasons to do it and to not do it. And if your dog starts to rely on you saying, hey, take me to the hide, or starts falsing to make you do something, that can happen. It doesn't happen to all the dogs, but it can happen.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think our dogs also get used to us doing really weird things occasionally, once or twice, and they get over it. And I think in some cases, like where it's pooling and then you end up showing them where it is. I think some dogs do go, oh, this is what was happening. And ideally, we would have enabled them to figure that out in training, but we're not in training, and we do a million things in trial that are not good training. And that's why we have trial recovery, because we are doing a million things that we wouldn't do if we had the time and space and ability to do it otherwise. So I think knowing that across the board in trial is really valuable. Because, you're also paying your dog for fringing over and over again. And you're also probably taking over a lot more than you should, and whatever else. And you can't get away from doing unproductive things in trial. It's just the nature of trialing.
It is.
Yep. And as Dave says, trialing is bad for training. Fix whatever later in practice. Don't worry about the weird trial thing.
I agree.
We have one more question that I'm aware of. I have an intact male dog who, when training nose work at a training facility that gets many dogs, gets extremely distracted by all the dog smells on the floor.
Okay.
We are working toward his NW2. Should I just end the game and put him back in the car and bring him out again after some time in the car? Try restarting him? Help.
Yeah. Okay. So again, this is stuff we cover in our Mastering Distractors course, and we have a lesson in our foundation course about crittering. So if you have our foundation, you'll see how we do this with our male dog who likes peeing, and he's never marked in a search, I don't think.
Not in trial.
No, sure, in training it can happen, but we have a progression, and it starts there. It starts dog pees, put them away. Okay. And we want to do that 5 or 10 times. And then we start adding some things to that to teach the dog. What I really don't like people doing is nagging their dog. So they see their dog starting to get distracted, and I don't like them going, search, no, leave it, search. And there's no response in the dog, and the handler is just talking.
And the dog's not learning to manage their own behavior.
No. And the other thing I don't like is forceful corrections. And it's not because I'm squeamish about corrections. It's because, one, I don't think they work as well. And two, you can create an unintentional aversion to certain places in the search area, hot spots.
Or smells.
Yes.
Like smelling pee.
Yeah. And so now your dog is not willing to search somewhere because they got a correction. Okay. And so that's an unintended consequence that we don't want. Did you? I wonder if you sent it to me.
Probably. let us know which one to attend to, but continue with what you're saying.
What I prefer people do is intervene calmly. So when you see the dog getting distracted, and now you need to know what you need to be a good reader of the dog. You need to know the dog's distracted versus not distracted versus working. And that means probably you need to only do this in known searches initially. So you count 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3 Mississippi. At the end of 3 Mississippi, you go in, you take the dog by their collar, detach them from the distraction, pause. There's a few more steps in between, but I'm just skipping you to the advance. Pause. 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3 Mississippi, and then say search and let the dog go again. If they go right back to the spot, you do it again. You do it again. You do it again until the dog realizes every time I go here, I get interrupted, and then I
guess I might as well go find.
And don't redirect them somewhere new. Just send them to search right from that, because my goal is for them to search through it. This works really well, surprisingly well for a lot of different dogs. So I would recommend that you try it. Don't get excited. Don't get mad. Just calmly do this. And then the next thing is, anytime you have to do that in training, the very next search, you should put a hide where you did this correction, so that we don't accidentally create that aversion of that spot. I want the dog to know there could be a hide there. You still have to search there. I just don't want you to stop and get distracted.
And I don't know if you talked about containers, but we do a lot of potty areas with open buckets or boxes where the dog knows where the valuable parts of the search area are, especially the first couple repetitions. And it's basically a direct decision between look in the containers for odor or critter. And so if this floor is really bad like this, I would do the same thing. I would pull out containers. And then we tend to do fewer containers the more rounds we go in, and we start to do hides outside of the containers, even when the containers are there. But give the dog a super strong context. Also, I would make sure that your ritual for a search is really clear to you and the dog. And I have no idea what your ritual is. It may already be. But when my first dog was a notorious marker, and part of fixing that, and I think it's very similar with just crittering, is making sure that the equipment means work. You're not wearing your equipment if you use equipment.
Yeah, don't potty the dog on their equipment.
Don't let them. Important. Don't spend time crittering before a search on your equipment. Keep your equipment really clear, and
that means if you wear a harness, you need to take it off.
Yeah. And you need to put it on shortly.
And for everyone else who doesn't have a critting problem, who's like, I need to take my harness off. No, not necessarily. This is for people who have this problem. You have to go out of your way to make it even clearer to the dog when they're allowed to sniff, critter, smell, when they're not.
Yeah, no, I would say there are other arguments for being more precise with your equipment. I had a student many years ago who had just told me, I think 2 weeks in a row before this, that her dog didn't care about his change of equipment. And she did it, but she didn't think it made any difference at all. And she always put her harness on like at the beginning of the trial and took it off like at the end of the trial or something. So this trial, I think it was an NW3, they had to walk across a literal football field to get to the first search. And she had his equipment on at the car, and she may not have pottied him in it, so she may have put it on at the car and then walked with the search and then taken it back off at the car. But in any case, she realized partway through this long walk to the search that her dog was searching the entire way. By the time he got to the search, he was exhausted. And so after that, she got a lot more careful with her equipment changes. Okay, so the question, or was there anything else about that question? Sorry.
You drank some caffeinated coffee, huh? No, we can go to our last question.
Okay. At a recent Nosework class, we were doing multiple blind hide searches. Some hides were inaccessible. Some hides were paired. My instructor offered to reward to make sure that the reward was offered quickly and exactly at source. I declined because I want the reward to come from me. I don't want my dog to expect other people might reward her when she is working. Thoughts? One question, and there could be a lot of good reasons for this, but why couldn't you offer the reward, the reinforcer, quickly and at source? And if there is a way you could do that, and that was important to the instructor, perhaps there's a workaround there. I have other thoughts on the other part.
Yeah, I think it depends on like, why are we doing it blind? If she's just like, are we just practicing the handler moving in ways that the dog, that the handler doesn't know where the hide is? That's a good thing to do. I don't necessarily, unless your dog has again, a problem with other people. I don't necessarily have a problem with other people running in and rewarding my dog. I don't want, obviously, I don't want my dog starting to go and solicit treats from other people. That's true.
And you do have a golden.
Yeah, but I have a lab, and she's also very sociable, and I wouldn't worry about it. But
it might someday. Let's experiment and see what happens.
Yeah, well, because I've done that with other people too. But I mostly, when I do this, I do it with thrown treats. So I don't go and interact with the dog. I could have 3 or 4 people throwing treats from different sides. This is to prevent the dog from anticipating where the treat is going to come from. So it develops a little bit stronger attachment to source instead of orienting towards a particular person. That said, I think my preference would be for you to just tell me when the dog found it and direct me to feed in the right spot.
Yeah.
That's my preference, but I wouldn't necessarily have a problem with it once. I wouldn't want to do it over and over again. And I'd probably, if I did that, I'd want to do some drills shortly after where the dog had to ignore people with food in their hands, things like that.
And if an instructor is doing a search for a particular reason, I just want to say I'm not arguing with their reason for why they're doing it. And I understand when it's blind and handlers are going to be inherently slow. We do want people not to mess up their dog. And I do a lot of coached blind where if people don't call it, I call it for them. Or if the dog is very new to blind, I call it right when the dog gets there. I had a student who used to be local, or I have a student who used to be local, who was working on some toy reinforcement. And I wanted to show her some mechanics with her dog because toy work is super physical. And so I reinforced her dog several times. And her dog did for a while find hides and then whip around and look at me, whether her owner was paying with toys or food, because it's going to come from you. Because we had a lot of fun playing with the toy together. But that wasn't really an inherent problem because she could, even if I judged them in a trial, if her dog snapped around and looked at me like that, she should just call alert.
Yeah, exactly.
And
I had remember Kim's dog, Melvin. I trialed with the dog. And so I spent a lot of time rewarding the dog. And we were doing a mock trial and I was judge. And the dog found the hide and looked right at me. And the mom was like, what the heck? Hey, look at me. I'm the one who's going to feed you.
But also sometimes dogs aren't accurately keeping track of where the other people are in the space. So they know a body is off to that side, a body is off to that side, and they just look at the wrong person. Now, I think if your dog does start to solicit food, that is a real problem. And that's a reason that I highly encourage handlers not to ever let other people at your nose work class give your dog treats. We had a student in California for a while who she got through it, but she had a lot of classes, not nose work, with this particular group of people. And she would go around in a circle and each person would give her a treat. So she would start her search. She'd say, where are my treats, people? Because that's way less work than going and looking for odor. So that can be a real problem. But I don't usually pay other people's dogs with food in classes just because it doesn't usually end up happening. Yeah. But I don't think it would, unless the dog has a sociability problem. I don't think it would cause a problem. Couple searches. I did actually start handling a student dog. She was running 2 dogs and it was becoming too much. So for a while I handled one of her dogs for her in classes, and she doesn't come over and, only hang out on my lap now. She still does her work and gets paid by her handler. So a lot comes down to, your comfort level with something as a handler, but also who your dog is. If your dog is a really, really serious food whore, you may have more problems than dogs who aren't. So you got to advocate for yourself and your dog and what you're comfortable with. But just like our answer to one of the previous questions, doing something a couple times usually isn't going to mess you up that much. You can always fix it. Yeah.
I usually like doing things, even things that I don't 100% agree with. I like doing them once or twice just to give the dog the experience.
Yeah.
I did a class recently where I did remote reward. So the dog's alerting over here and they had to come to your hand instead of stay at the source to get the treat. It's not something that I particularly like, but it's an experience I want the dog to have. Because guess what? You have to do that at trial sometimes. Sometimes the way where the dog is alerting, you can't get there. The dog's deep under, you can't reach, you can't get there. It's behind an object. And so what are you going to do? you're gonna feed them, but you're gonna feed them over here. So I want the dog to have seen that once or twice before we get the trial.
I was in an elite trial where it was multiple like amphitheater like rows of tables and chairs, and my dog went through the chairs down to the middle level on the ground floor, and I was at the top, and she found a hide and I called it. I was not going to spend an extra multiple minutes getting down there. Well, that wouldn't have been that long, but I'm not even going to spend 30 seconds getting down there to pay her at what may or may not be the hide location, because I don't even know 100%
by the time you get there too.
Right. So I just recalled her and paid her there, and because I wanted to work where I had been anyway. So we just did that. So
yeah,
you do what you got to do. Also, if I think it's worth training with someone and going to their class, and I have done this where I was regularly going to someone's class where there were things that I disagreed with from a training perspective, but I was choosing to go to them. And so I took their advice in the class. And then sometimes I would then take that on because it was actually a better advice than I originally thought.
And sometimes you just discard it. You're like, it's fine.
We did that for a class or two, and that's not what I'm going to do for my next 10 practices, but I'll do something, the next time I come here. And it's no big deal. Like when we first started picking up hides, we were picking up hides all the time and in our own practice. But when we went to other people's classes, we weren't going to ask to pick up their hides. Yeah. And so we just, we worked around those things, and it didn't mess up our dogs that we were doing things a little bit differently, different things. Now, there are some things that are maybe conflicting enough that you have to decide which side of something you're on if they are super conflicting. But those things, this was someone we probably 90% agreed with anyway. Sometimes you have to pick how you're training, but yes, Michael?
Nothing. I have no thoughts.
Okay. I think that's everything, unless we have any.
When's our next meeting?
Our next meeting, I can't believe it's going to be March, but I think I say that every month.
Every month. It's going to be the next month.
It is. I don't know why we're basically almost in spring now. I saw a whole bunch of buds on one of our trees the other day, and I feel like it should still be winter.
It's got to be 23, huh?
Does. So it's going to be the 23rd of March, 5 p.m. Central.
Okay. Thank you guys for coming out and asking such interesting questions. We will see you on the 23rd. And
participating in the chat. We always really appreciate that.
We do.
Yeah, and Nikki mentioned that UKC requires rewards to be away from source. And so you have to also know what your trialing plans are. You may need to have various flexibilities depending on what venue you're competing in.
So, we'll see you guys then, and start sending us your questions now. And, hope to see you in some of our classes in the upcoming weeks.
Yes, we'll see some of you at various seminars and things too.
Absolutely.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.